Tuesday, June 5th. Have a motion to approve the minutes, please? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you very much. We have first on our agenda ordinances on final read. Does anybody have any questions about 5A or B? All right, seeing none, again, those are on final read. Madam Clerk, let's move down to ordinances first reading. 6A, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 26, Sections 2626, 2627, 2634, and 2635 relative to fee changes.
All right, I see no questions on this one. Let's move on to Resolution 7A, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to accept, if awarded, the 2018 Building Better Communities Grant sponsored by the American Water Charitable Foundation and the National Recreation and Park Association to be applied to the East Lake Park project in the amount of $150,000.
Questions? Seeing none, B, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to accept and distribute for fiscal years 2013 through 2019 the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnership Act funds, Home, and Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and Project Program income for a total approximate amount of $3,438,143.
All right, still no questions. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the donation of a 1999 Thomas 77 passenger school bus to the Erlanger Center for Emergency and Disaster Medicine Services to utilize on mass fatality incidents or mass hospital evacuations with an approximate value of $100,549.88.
I've got to ask Chief to come down and at least talk about this. I thought I'd see a light, so I'm going to call you down myself. Sorry, Chief.
Yeah, that was, we bought that on grant money a number of years ago, and it was designed if we had a large fatality, like a large school bus wreck that had multiple people, that we were able to haul people in that to a morgue.
So what are we doing with this, and is there a purpose for it, or we no longer have a purpose, or how's that?
We don't really have a purpose for it. We kind of used it as a rehab bus as well, so we could turn the air conditioning on when we had large fires and firefighters could get inside of it. It wasn't really conducive to rehab either. It just kind of reached a point where it's just not useful to us anymore. So we're paying maintenance costs on it now, keeping fuel in it just to keep it running, and we just kind of outgrown the usefulness of it. So Erlanger is better suited to use it. They can maintain it. They've got the money to maintain it and keep it up. We have a handful of ventilators that we keep on there as well that we're donating to Erlanger. It's just better suited in their world than it is ours.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chief.
All right.
Madam Clerk, D, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Philip McKenzie as a special police officer unarmed for the McCamey Animal Center to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
All right, E, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Wilford M. Sidnor Jr. as a special police officer unarmed for the Land Development Office to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
F, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of John Harris as a special police officer unarmed for the Department of Economic and Community Development, do so special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
All right, next, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Joshua Chandler as a special police officer unarmed for the Department of Economic and Community Development to do so, hold on, let me read that again. Do so special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
No questions. H, please.
A resolution authorizing Collins and Company to pay an on-the-job injury settlement to city employee Dennis Pedigo, employee ID number 60441, in the amount of $49,338.86 for a permanent partial impairment rating in accordance with the city's injury on duty policy.
All right, still moving down to IT. Aye, please.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Information Officer to renew a contract with AST Corporation as the provider of hosting and professional services for Oracle E-Business Suite, SLA, and other technical services to the Department of Information Technology for the period of 1 year beginning May 28, 2018 through May 27, 2019, with the option to extend for 1 additional year for an amount not to exceed $1 million per contract year.
I see no lights, but I have a question. I don't see Brent, so. Donna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. As I've said for years, I'll be much better when I quit seeing Oracle in these purchase agreements. So what's the plan? Because I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of us moving forward, even in through the budget process of getting more into SaaS and all that, which is great. That's the direction we need to be going. But some of that should start to alleviate some of these Oracle needs.
Yes.
So talk to me about it. Give me some idea that there's a plan to start weaning off of this system, because this doesn't feel like there is.
Right. There is. In this next fiscal year, that's when we start moving to a SaaS solution, be it Oracle or some other provider. And we'll be going out to RFP or assessing what we have to see if we want to move. There has been some assessments to date, but we'll have to do some comparisons and make that determination. But the desire and the plan is to move forward and move off of the solution we have now.
So we expect this, hopefully, to just be 1 additional year, as it says, and maybe have something in place to start moving over?
That is correct, but it will be a process. This is a large,
I'm aware, but it's a process I wanted started years and years and years
I
ago.
know,
So I'm
it
hoping we're
is.
getting to the point where we're at least starting instead of.
yes. So we have done some changes where originally we had everything housed, on servers in-house. In the last 2 years, we moved to the hosted solution and some managed services. That relieved a lot of the resource tie-up that it was putting on us, and also helped with the level of service that's been, received through the application. Now the next step is to look at the SaaS, right? Move to software as a service and move it off of its current hosted solution.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
See no other questions? Madam Clerk, Jay, please.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Information Officer to renew a blanket contract with BG Staffing, Zycron Information Technology Services and Solutions as provider of professional services for the Department of Information Technology for the period of 1 year beginning May 28, 2018 through May 27, 2019 for an amount not to exceed $1 million per contract year.
Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I get some information on this, please?
I had a feeling I could have asked you to just wait a minute.
I was thinking I should
Sorry.
stay. That's
Sorry
all right.
about that.
Yes, no problem.
Can you walk me through the professional services for the department on this?
Right. BG Staffing is what we use to augment our staff and bring in staff to help us with special projects and day-to-day activities. So we do have contractors on staff.
These are IT specialists.
They are,
and far
yes.
beyond our
They are.
capabilities, I'm assuming.
That is correct. Systems engineers.
Okay. That does help. And I apologize for
Networking.
making you come back up. Thank you very much.
Sure,
Thank
no
you, Mr. Chair.
problem.
Hey, Donna, are these new, or is this a continuation?
It's a continuation.
Okay, and it's just 1 year. Is the expectation to continue to need these services, or maybe even need more of them in the future, or?
Yes, but it will reduce as we finish up some of the projects that we're doing with the data center move and some of the network upgrades and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk? Okay, please.
A resolution authorizing the retirement of K-9 Duco as a service dog.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, sir. Chief, we deferred this from last week just to make sure Duco could be here this evening. Is that, I just wanted to confirm that they'll be here? Okay, great.
Hey, Chief, can we also get somebody in a bodysuit to run back and forth right down here? Maybe Councilman Byrd, and let him chase him around a little bit? Can we try to do that? That would be excellent. I mean, it's kind of like a last thing before retirement. You don't mind? Yeah, perfect. Sweet. Councilman Byrd. You'd be good. Thanks, Chief. L, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into a third agreement to exercise option to renew for the partnership agreement with Chattanooga Flying Disc Club for the renewal term of 1 year for the continued use and operation of all present and future disc golf courses at city public parks and for the daily use and tournament play.
All right, I see no questions on this item. That finishes up all the items we have under our regular agenda. We will be moving into planning and zoning, and I believe that is the only committee that we're going to be having this afternoon other than the regular agenda items. Is there any other business to come before the regular committee? Councilman Henderson.
Mr. Chair, earlier in our budget hearings, you had requested that a continuing resolution be put on the agenda for next week. And I would just like to, in your behalf, direct the city attorney to prepare and place on the agenda for next week a continuing resolution for the budget. Mr. Attorney?
Thank you, sir. And I believe at the time, Councilwoman Burrs, you were chairing, and that was a consensus of the council at the time. All right. Mr. Attorney, got it? And somehow our board still flipped around. Hey, Chris, we're on planning and zoning somehow all of a sudden. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another business, I will be appointing a Helen Parker to the Board of Sign Appeals this evening.
All right, thank you, sir. Any further items? All right, seeing none, we'll move to planning and zoning. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Planning and Zoning Committee for June 5th. May I please get a, thank you very much, and then properly seconded. Mr. Bridger, just kidding. You
I don't have the
look-
bow tie on.
I don't see the bow tie. I don't see the bow tie.
I don't have the bow tie.
So, Brian, welcome. I look forward to working with you on this committee meeting.
Yes, as well. We
And,
got a bunch of cases today to discuss.
We're going to film this for John, just to let him know how great we did without him.
Let's don't do too great. He needs to come back every month and do this.
So, what I'd like to do is, John, old habits, Brian, old habits.
That's fine.
What I'd like to do is, these items A through, goodness, D, we have already heard.
Correct.
And from what I understand, I think the implementation or acceptance of a revised site plan will kind of clear all of this up.
That's my
So,
understanding.
If I would like to yield to Councilman Henderson to follow up on that.
Thank you, Greg. I just want, Brian.
Does need a
got
name
me all
badge next
messed
time?
That's
Well, Greg did
really,
it for so long and
that's really going back a long way.
long ways there.
Greg, hey, yeah.
I'll answer whatever.
Can you confirm that the correct date is on a new master site plan now?
It is. It has March 19th of 2018 in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. So if it's okay with you, Councilman, I'd say we bypass those items, and we'll, thank you. Thank you for your work on that. Brian, let's move on to E. This is a deferral from 515.
That is case 52, I think it is.
That is case 2018-052, please.
Yes, this one I believe was presented last month as well in North Chattanooga. It was deferred. I guess Councilman Mitchell may have been out of town that night, so I don't know if I need to go through that presentation as well. We have two cases actually on the same piece, well, properties next door, case 52 and 56. So do you want me to go through both of those to?
Are you good, Councilman? You have anything you'd like to add on that?
Well, Mr. Chair, we've had meetings with the neighborhood, and we've got the neighbors have some serious concerns about mostly stormwater runoff, because these properties are well above and steep running into the properties across the street. There's also some issues of the street itself being so narrow and needs paving very badly. I said it needs paving very badly. Oh, well, never mind. But I'm speaking to the applicant, and he is either going to ask for a withdrawal, or we'll be voting on it next week. There won't be any more deferrals, I guess, to make a long story short.
Okay, so we'll be good to go on item E and F.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Moving down, Mr. Schultz to 2018-093, item G.
Yes, this is the first new case that we have in front of you. This is in Lupton City. It's a request to rezone from M1 and R1 to R1, R4, and UGC. The property is located at Lupton Drive. Its proposed use is a mixed-use residential commercial development by the Riverton Group. It's currently zoned R1, R3, and M1. It's currently a vacant piece of property. It was a former golf course at one time. To the north, you have DuPont Parkway. To the south are tennis courts, recreation, and single-family residential. To the east, of course, you have Tennessee River, and then the west are single-family residential and a former industrial plant. This is just another view of that same site. It's currently zoned, like I said, M1, R1, and R3. It's surrounded to the north by M1 and R1, south R1 residential and M1, to the east M1 zoning, and to the west R3 and R1. We have several requests in this area over the years for different reasons. We had in 2005 a case for a PUD for 49 acres, had 87 single-family dwellings and 43 townhomes. Just adjacent to this site, we had the city acquired some property on Mercer Street through a mandatory referral. And then in 2017, we had a request for a mandatory referral for a wet weather conveyance tank. That has since been withdrawn. So we've had several cases in this area. This property is located in the 100-year floodplain. As you can see the map shown here. This area is located in the Hickson North River Plan, which recommends office residential. This was submitted by the applicant. This is the requested area to be rezoned. Again, they're wanting to rezone a little portion on the left-hand corner, and the orange from R1 to UGC. The light blue, they're wanting to go from R1 to R4 and M1 to R4. And then the light green would be M1 to R1. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. We have another case later on the agenda, which is actually a PUD that's associated with this site. But they're proposing to do 490 dwelling units on this property, which will consist of 85 townhomes and 70 mixed-use residential units and 355 single-family detached dwellings. It does have a commercial component along Lupton Drive, which is shown here. It does have commercial as well as townhomes. Staff comments were this proposal to provide a walkable residential neighborhood with mixed use would be appropriate. The plan supports this request, but staff did have a concern with the R4 area because in the R4 you can do hospitals or medically assisted operations, so staff had a concern with that. So staff's recommendation was to deny the R4 and approve the R1 and UGC. The UGC, we had conditions on that. Those conditions were height of any building shall not exceed 35 feet, no drive-throughs, pole-mounted signs are prohibited, no wholesaling and accessory warehousing and related space, motels, hotels, self-storage facilities, and auto-oriented uses in hospitals. The UGC has a maximum square footage of 12,000 square foot for any one building, so we put that as a condition. Also, we felt it was appropriate to contain the commercial usage in this UGC, so we put a maximum non-residential footprint of 40,000 square foot within the UGC overall. And to keep the maximum density of residential at a cap, we put in 12 dwelling units per acre. At the Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Actually, the neighborhoods came out in support of this project. So the PC felt that this was an appropriate request, and they recommended approval of the applicant's request, which was R1 to R4, M1 to R1, and R1 to UGC. We did recommend conditions. R1 has no conditions. The R4, Plan Commission limited the usage to townhouses, single-family dwellings, greenhouses, parking lots, and assisted living facilities. And the UGC is the same conditions I just read, with the exception of number 1. It was changed from 35 feet to 45 feet. Then bullet number 5 was changed from 40,000 square feet to 45,000 square feet. So that's the case there. Anybody have any questions? Planning Commission recommend approval with conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Thank you for reading those conditions. They were very well considered and thoughtful by the Planning Commission. I do see a light for Councilman Mitchell.
That light has been turned off.
All right, his light has been turned off for the record. Do I have any other questions on this item? Seeing none. Mr. Schultz?
Okay.
Moving on.
Case 2018-82 is a rezone from R3 to C2 for 5513 Highway 153. The purpose was for retail and restaurant. It's currently behind the Holcomb's Garden Center on 153. It's currently zoned R3. It's surrounded by commercial and many warehouses. This is a picture of the site. This is a view of the site itself. It's actually behind that billboard pole. This is a view looking down 153. The site's just to the right. Here's the current zoning. It's currently zoned R3. It's surrounded by C2, M3 to the north, and C5 to the south. This was the site plan that was submitted with the request. It was going to be an extension of it's a parking lot, basically, for this property. The Hickson North River Area Plan recommends a medium business mix for this site, which would actually be a C2 zone or C5. Staff felt that the request was supported by the land use plan. You have commercial all around this property, so staff recommended to approve. Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Planning Commission felt that the proposed use is compatible with a development form of the area and supported by the land use plan. Therefore, they recommend approval with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Seeing no questions from Chairman Smith, the rest of the council, let's move forward.
84, this is another case in Hickson. It's rezoned from R1 to A1 for 1649 Cayman Road, just to the west of Hickson High School. The purpose is to build a barn with agriculture uses. It's currently zoned R1. It's surrounded by single family, a utility water tank is just to the north. You have surrounded large lot single family dwellings as well as agricultural uses. This is a picture of the site. Just another view of the site. You can see just to the north of this picture, you can see Hickson High School, and to the left is the utility water company tank that's sitting there. It's currently zoned R1. Everything around this site's R1. You do have one little R5, which is on Babe Lane, that's sitting there. There is no A1 nearby, but just further up Middle Valley, actually in the county, there is A1 that's present. This is the site plan that was submitted with the request. It does meet the requirements of the A1 zone. This is the proposed barn that's going to be constructed on the site. A portion of this property is located in the floodplain, the 1-year floodplain, just along the access to this property. The Hickson North River Area Plan does recommend low-density residential for this site. The proposal contains the existing single-family dwelling on a large tract of land. Is consistent with adjacent uses, therefore staff recommended to approve. Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Planning Commission felt the use was compatible with adjacent uses and supported by the land use plan, therefore they recommended to approve with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. You good, Chairman? All right. Any other comments or questions on this item? Very good. Mr. Schultz, item J, please.
Okay. This is 2858. This is a request to rezone from R1 to O1 off Standiford Gap. You can see the picture. You got Standiford Gap and Jenkins Road. This request is it's a currently zoned R1. She wants to use this as an office, as a home office. It's surrounded by single-family dwellings. To the south, you do have townhomes. To the east, or single-family dwellings as well as townhomes to the east. And the west, you have single-family residential dwellings. This is a picture of the site from Standiford Gap. Another view across the street from Standiford Gap. Stanford Gap looking, you see the single-family homes and some of the townhomes on the right-hand side. This is another view of Stanford Gap. The site's on the left-hand side. Currently zoned R1. You do have R1 across the street to the north along Stanford Gap. To the south, RT1. To the east is RT1. And to the west, we have RZ1 residential townhouse mixed-use zoning. We have had several requests in this area. Back in 2002, the property just to the west was rezoned to RZ1. To the south in 2010, it was rezoned to RT1. And then just across Jenkins Road in 2017, this was rezoned to C2. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. It's basically a reuse of existing structure that's on site. It does have a lot of drainage easements and on the property, so really there's nowhere to expand the structure. The Hamilton Place plan recommends low-density residential for this site, which is usually 1 to 4 dwelling units per acre. Staff felt that the introduction of office zone, which is O1, in the center of a residential area would create a precedent for future requests along this stretch of Stanford Gap Road. This is in conflict with the land use plan and not consistent with the residential form found along Stanford Gap Road, so staff recommended to deny. There was no opposition to Planning Commission. Planning Commission had concerns with O1 as well, but solution worked out was R4, special zone, which does allow office uses. But Planning Commission recommended conditions to be used as an office use and single-family dwelling only, except for the existing driveway and parking pad. No additional surface parking or paving shall be permitted between the structure and Stanford Gap Road. Signage is restricted to one nameplate, non-illuminated, attached to the building or projecting from the building, and not more than 1 square foot in area. This comes strictly from the home occupation requirements. No dumpster service for trash pickup, and use of existing structure only and limited to 1 story. So staff, Planning Commission recommend approve with those conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I had several lights, so I think the anticipation of those was the presentation of going to O1. And I had instructed to please come up with a solution for R4, as I am concerned about O zoning in that particular area. I think that this situation solve the issue that we were dealing with, and the applicant was also very receptive to this solution, so.
Correct. And we'd also discussed a home occupation, but the applicant does not live on the property, so she can't have a home occupation.
Right, yeah, that's exactly correct. So that being said, I appreciate the lights coming in, because I thought that's exactly what we were going to look at. Does anybody else have any questions about this case? Comments? Very good. Thank you for your work on that, Brian. Kay, please.
Okay, this is case 2018-83. This is a request to rezone from O1 to R1 on Cromwell Road. The purpose is proposed single-family dwelling. It's currently zoned O1. This site's currently a single-family dwelling. To the north is vacant land and multifamily. To the south are office uses. To the east, industrial, and then the west, single-family residential. This is a picture of the site. You can clearly see it was used as a single-family dwelling. This is across the street, the industrial use that's across from the property. This is a view looking down Cromwell Road. You can see the office just to the north there. Again, it's zoned O1. To the north is R4 special zone. To the south, M2. East is M1 zoning. And then to the west, you have R2 and R1 residential zoning. In O1 zone, you can have residential, but in 1997, this site was rezoned to O1 with the following conditions. Office use only. All easements to be retained, and landscape conditions. The problem's bullet number 1, office use only. This is the site plan that was submitted with the case. Clearly, the applicant's going to reuse the existing structure. Staff comments, several large tracts of land zoned for manufacturing uses. The existing O1 zone is more appropriate in this location than the proposed R1 zone. The O1 office zone serves as basically a transition between those residential uses and the M1. So staff recommended to deny the applicant's request to rezone, but lift those conditions. If you lift the conditions, the applicant could use it as a single-family dwelling. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. I think the issue boils down to financing. There was some issue with financing in the bank and it being O1, so Planning Commission agreed and recommended rezone to R1 with no conditions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I do have a light. Councilman Gilbert, please.
So the original was R1 when it first built the house, correct?
Correct. In 97, it was R1, then they rezoned it to O1. When it went to O1, I guess the use was office, and that's why that condition of office use only came about.
Okay, so the reason why your staff denied it is because of,
Well, staff recommended the O1. We felt there was a better transition between the R4, the R1 and the M1. If you look at the map, you have R4 to the north, M1 and M2. The R4 or O1 zone often serves as a transition zone between those uses and the residential R1. So that's what staff's thinking on it.
but the bank will not clear the house being an O1 versus an R1, correct?
According to the applicant, he had several contracts on the property, and always the financing fell through because of the O1 zone. Even though residential is permitted, the bank probably has issues with that. So that's why Planning Commission went to recommend R1.
I hope he'd be here next week so I can talk to him about it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are you good, Councilman?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your questions. Any other comments or questions on that item? Seeing none. L, please.
This is case 2018-81. This is a request, not a zoning request, but this is a request to lift condition number 5 of ordinance 13132. That condition stated limited to office use or single family only. It's located at 6684 East Brainerd Road, just behind the BMW car dealership. The purpose is to construct townhomes. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is a church and single family residential. To the south are industrial uses. To the east is a medical office. And to the west are single family and multifamily residential. This is a picture from East Brainerd. The site's just to the right-hand side of this picture. This is another view looking down East Brainerd Road, the church that's across the street. This is the single-family home that's adjacent to the site along East Brainerd. Again, another view of the site from East Brainerd Road, just on the right-hand side. It's currently zoned R4 with conditions. To the north is R1. South, you have R4 and R3. And then the east is C2. And the west is R1. Again, this property was rezoned back in 2016 with 5 conditions. Those conditions are listed on the screen, but the applicant's request is number 5, which was basically limited to office use and single-family detached. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. The proposed use is townhomes, but this site plan does not indicate how many townhomes are proposed on the site. It does show parking spaces, 8 parking spaces. It shows landscaping, but it doesn't indicate the number of townhomes. So staff struggled with how many units will be proposed on this site. Staff looked at this and felt that the allowable uses in the R4 zone can be compatible with the surrounding uses. That says R1, but it really should be R4. The R4 special zone is an appropriate buffer between the intense commercial uses, which are in the C2, versus the single-family zones that are nearby. Staff recommended to deny the applicant's request, but amend condition number 5 to add townhouses to number 5, and add condition number 6, limit the number of curb cuts total for this site to 1 curb cut. Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Proposed use is compatible with the development form of the area, so Planning Commission recommended to deny the applicant's request, but recommended approval of amending condition number 5. Conditions 1 through 4 are existing conditions. Those are being carried forward to the new ordinance. Condition number 5, Planning Commission is recommended to keep the same, but add townhomes as a use.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I do have one light. Obviously, Dr. Burrs, please.
Yeah, I've not talked with this lady. We don't know what she has in mind. There was a lot of discussion when we first rezoned a year ago, or nearly 2
Yeah.
years, about a year and a half ago. Obviously, it's a transition zone, yet we've not seen a site plan. We've not seen anything. I was in meetings and couldn't be there, and I couldn't figure out what it was she wanted that would not be. All right, so there were too many. She wanted an extra curb cut, and that's, you tell me what you
Well-
want, because I couldn't figure out what she wanted.
Well, she didn't ask for the curb cut. Right now, the site plan shows 1 curb cut, and condition number 6, Planning Commission staff recommended to add that to limit the curb cuts to 1. There was some discussion back and forth on that. Since it is an existing curb cut, there's no need for that condition. As far as the uses go, I don't think the applicant's really clear on what she wants to use the site for as well. I think that's why she wanted to lift condition 5 altogether to open it up to any use.
Okay, and that's what we're like 100% against.
Correct, and that's why,
So what I'm trying to get, I mean, I'd be inclined to defer till somebody knows what the use is, what it looks like, what the buffering is.
here's the site plan. It does show a 10-foot buffer along the C2.
It's a really small piece of property
is.
to do all this to.
It is.
That's not to scale. And so I'm thinking, okay, you got to be real careful here.
Or if city council wishes to deny the request, those conditions still remain. She can only use it as a single-family detached dwelling or an office use. So if it is denied, she still has those uses based on those conditions.
Which is what was existing. What was really
Right.
confusing is, what is this thing she wants, and what does it look like? And
Yeah, she said townhomes, but if you look at the site plan, it just
I
says
got it.
hypothetical building, so that could be, I mean, there's so much, I mean, there's only so many homes you can put on that site. It's very restricted, so that's why staff was okay with adding townhomes as a use, because the site restricts what you can do with it based on size.
correct. So talk to me about that. The size of the site, it would be restricted to what? Does she know it's restricted to like 3 townhomes?
Right, I think she's just speculative right now, because I think she's having a hard time marketing this based on just office use and
That's
single family.
what I
That's my
think.
guess.
Okay, okay. So, okay, I haven't talked with her. I think it might be wiser to do some more thinking about this.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Purz. Any other questions, comments on this item? Very good, moving on. Item M.
This is case 2018-90, a request to rezone from R1 residential to C2 out on Silverdale Road for Silverdale Baptist, 2916 Silverdale Road. The proposed use is a coffee shop. It's currently zoned R1. It's currently a vacant piece of property as well as a parking lot for the church. To the north, a single-family detached residential across Bonnie Oaks. To the south, it's a parking lot and office use. And to the east is commercial, I think a convenience store and a Wendy's. And to the west, of course, is Silverdale Baptist Church. This is a picture of the site looking from Bonnie Oaks. A view of the site from Bonnie Oaks Drive, just to the right, you can see the Wendy's and the convenience store just to the north of the picture. This is a view of the site, the left-hand side, looking down Silverdale Road, and Silverdale Baptist just to the right. Again, it's currently zoned R1. Actually, this property has a split zoning designation. It has R1 and C2 on the property. To the north, it's R3. To the south, R3 residential and O1. To the east is C2, and to the west is R1 residential zoning. We had several requests in the years along Bonnie Oaks Drive. The land use plan doesn't support commercial expansion, but over the years, we've had several C2 requests that actually have expanded that commercial use along Bonnie Oaks. Most recently was in 2016 on this property. Again, it's a C2 split, little reverse L there. The Wendy's next door was rezoned in 2014 with conditions of 2 curb cuts only on the Bonnie Oaks, restaurant only, 8-foot opaque vinyl fence, and provided type B landscaping. So that's the property that's right next door to this request. This is the original site plan that was submitted with the request. You can see the proposed coffee shop sitting on Bonnie Oaks with 2 access points, one off Bonnie Oaks and another one off Silverdale. This was submitted for our review. At Planning Commission, the applicant submitted a revised site plan that basically shifts the orientation of this building on the site at a more of an angle. Still keeps the same curb cuts, but it shifts the building configuration. The Shalford Road Lee Highway Plan recommends single-unit residential for this site. But again, going back to those previous zoning requests, that has now since changed along Bonnie Oaks. The plan discourages encroachment of commercial uses along Bonnie Oaks Drive, but again, those previous cases have set the precedent. Since this property serves as a transition between the adjacent church and residential uses and across the street, conditions are recommended for this site. Those conditions are 4. One was perimeter planting with shrubs for street edge along Bonnie Oaks Drive. It goes on to describe what that shall look like. Number 2 is limited to monument sign only, limit to 1 curb cut on Bonnie Oaks Drive, and limit to 1 restaurant only. Conditions 1 and 2 basically applied to that old site plan when the building was more square at Bonnie Oaks. Since he's reconfigured that, condition number 1 is no longer valid. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission found that the proposed use is consistent with the development form of the area, and they recommended to deny the applicant's request, but recommended approval with conditions, which was 2 conditions now: limit to 1 curb cut on Bonnie Oaks Drive and limit to 1 restaurant only.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Dr. Burrs, you're good on this one?
I'm good.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And please.
This is case 2018-87. It's a rezone from M1 to UGC in the South Broad area, just south of US 24 and Broad Street. Its proposed use is a mixed-use residential condo on the 3rd floor. It's currently zoned M1. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north are commercial and office uses. To the south, you have industrial and vacant land. East, you have vacant commercial land, and then the west, you have the cell tower. There's a cell tower and I-24 right-of-way. This is a picture of the site looking from Sydney Street. You can see Broad Street just to the north of this picture. This is a view looking down Sydney Street. The site's just on the left-hand side. The site in this picture is on the right-hand side. This is Sydney Street, and you see the commercial use, or industrial use just to the left. Currently zoned M1. It is surrounded by UGC. Most of this UGC was rezoned back in 2015 through a zoning study to rezone all this M1 to UGC. This property is just left over. Sorry, that zoning case was in 2007. This is the site plan that was submitted with the request. It doesn't show much detail, but it is proposed mixed use. The South Broad District Plan recommends mixed use with a retail emphasis. This is the new South Broad Plan that was just adopted, I guess, about a month and a half ago by City Council. It does support the proposed zone and use. Staff recommend approve because it is in compliance with land use plan. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission felt the proposed use is compatible and recommended approve with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Councilman Oglesby? Oh, he is not in the room. Okay. Then we will move forward. Item O, please.
This is an amendment to the zoning code. Currently, you can have detached garages, like small storage building garages, private garages on your property, as long as they're set 5 foot off the side setback lines. 5 feet off the property line, you have a detached garage. With the picture in front of you on the screen, this is a townhouse development. The applicant wishes to do, in the area highlighted in the circle, detached garages. They're detached from the primary structure, but the garages themselves are attached to each other. Based on that section of the zoning code, they have to have a 5 foot side setback along the property line. We were asked to look at this condition, and staff agreed we need to change the ordinance, amend the ordinance to allow this type of development to occur. So what staff's recommending is to amend the section to basically keep it the same, but add everything in red. The building or structure shall be set back at least 5 feet from the side and rear lot lines, except for such attached structures in the RTZ zone only. There shall be no interior side setback requirement. So basically in the RTZ zone, you can have detached garages that are detached from the primary structure but are attached to themselves along the side property line. And this is an example of what this would look like. This only applies in the RTZ zone.
All right. Mr. Schultz, that's a real quick point on this. This is in District 4. That using this site as an example, but I want to take a second to say thanks to the RPA staff for looking at these changes, and I'll be asking for further review of other zoning categories to dive deeper into those, because as we look across the board at 2004, 7, and 21-year-old land use plans that we're desperately trying to catch up with, we're outpacing those plans dramatically. And these examples, I applaud you for having the flexibility and bringing those forward to us and allowing us to make those corrections.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving on to resolutions, planning, item E.
Yeah, this is a special exceptions permit for a PUD on Helix Farm. Those are the cases that we actually didn't discuss, but this is another case that just came before, Planning Commission last month. This is for a PUD for Helix Farm. It's currently zoned R4 and C2. I think we're all familiar with this site, so I'll skip through to the PUD plan. This is the PUD plan itself. It's proposed to be single-family dwellings with a density of 3.4 dwelling units per acre. Staff looked at the review. The Hickson Land Use Plan recommends high-density residential for this site. Staff's comments with the proposed development is compatible with the adopted land use plan. It's compatible with adjacent uses, which is multifamily. So staff recommended approval of the PUD plan. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission agreed with staff that the proposed use of single-family dwellings is compatible and recommended to approve.
Very good. I don't see a light from Councilman Henderson, so we will move forward if there's no other questions or comments on that item. Seeing none, item F.
2018-89 is another special exceptions permit for a planned unit development. This is in North Chattanooga, 12 River Vista Drive. The purpose is to develop, the screen says 4, but it's actually 6 single-family detached dwellings and ADUs. On the screen here, River Vista Drive, that's highlighted, that actually is a private drive that's owned by the applicant. So he owns River Vista Drive, which is private, and that's very key to this case. It's pretty much surrounded by single-family dwellings, detached dwellings. There's a golf course, but everything else around this is single-family dwellings. This is another view of the site. You can see River Vista Drive, basically a flag lot back to this large piece of property. This is a view of the entrance to the property itself. Some of the homes that are on River Vista Drive. I think that's at the end of River Vista Drive in Sterling. Another home that's on River Vista Drive. Again, it's all R1. Everything around this property is R1. A small portion of this property is in the floodplain, but all the homes are going to be out of the floodplain, so it should not be an issue. This is the site plan that was submitted, or the PUD plan that was submitted with the application. It's 6 estate lots plus the existing home that's there. The circles indicate ADUs that the applicant wishes to do on the property. Currently, ADUs are not allowed in the zone. The PUD doesn't waive that, so the applicant cannot do ADUs, and he's aware of that. This is just another PUD plan for the same property, just showing the potential lot lines. They're large lots, they're all acre plus. And the reason the applicant's doing the PUD is because of that private road. In the city, you cannot divide your property unless it's on a publicly maintained road. The applicant does own River Vista Drive. You can do a private road in a PUD. He has over 2 acres. He meets all the requirements of the PUD. It is simply the issue of the private road is the reason he needs to do the PUD, to be able to develop this site into lots. Staff felt the layout was consistent with the neighborhood with large lot, estate lots. We did have 2 conditions: no more than 6 residential lots and no more than 1 detached single-family dwelling per lot. That was more of a way to control the ADUs that were shown on the property. At Planning Commission, there was opposition. The opposition more or less focused on drainage issues on Heritage Landing, noise, related to River Vista Drive. Some of the folks on River Vista did not want the street widened. There was some kind of issue with a gate being in the right-of-way on somebody's property. There was other conditions brought up about some type of conditions, but it was more conditions between the property owner and developers, like bonds and stuff like that, so we couldn't address that. So Planning Commission recommended to approve with 1 condition: no more than 6 residential lots. Is that
Thank you,
somewhat
Mr.
clear on
Schultz.
that one?
Councilman Mitchell, do you have any questions on this one? No. Good. Any other questions from the council? Oh, I think we have one. Councilman Henderson, please.
Brian, you mentioned that there's no ADUs in a PUD. Does a PUD specifically, outlaw's not the right word, what am I, prohibit ADUs, or?
It just doesn't say they're allowed. Right now in a single-family R1 zone, you can only do single-family detached, 1 structure per lot. So the PUD overlay just goes on top of that, and it relieves the setbacks and lot standards, not the uses. So just because he goes to a PUD doesn't give him the ability to do ADUs. That's why we had condition number 2, but the planning commission, we discussed the potential of looking at ADUs that we discussed about a month ago, that if we do ADUs, he would have to come back and lift condition number 2. That's why condition number 2 was removed at planning commission. That way, if we ever do amend the zoning code to allow ADUs, he would not have to come back through to get the condition lifted.
So I'm a little confused what you just said. You said he wouldn't have to.
If condition number 2 was adopted by city council, he could not, if and when the council allows ADUs,
Okay.
he wouldn't be able to do it because the condition prohibits that.
Oh,
So planning commission felt, just go ahead and take it off. That way, if ADUs are ever allowed, he would not have to go back through the process of lifting the condition.
okay. Are you then recommending that condition number 2 be stricken?
Yes,
from the
planning commission
condition?
recommended only this condition here, no more than 6
Planning
residential lots.
commission did.
Yes.
Okay.
Staff had
now-
2.
Now we're,
I'm sorry, yeah. Planning commission had just the 1 condition.
Does that help you, Councilman? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any other questions or concerns about this item? Very good. Moving on to our last item, G.
This is case 2018-94, another special permit for a PUD. This is tied to the zoning case we just saw earlier today for the River City, or Lupton City property. This is a proposed mixed-use residential and commercial development. Again, this is the site. You see it's a large vacant piece of property, former golf course, and different uses around this property. Just another view of that same site. Again, we have a case before you to rezone this property to R1 UGC and R4 with conditions. Again, we've had several requests in this area. Same, everything else is the same. Here's the site plan that was submitted, or the PUD plan that was submitted with this application. It's a large piece of property. It does have everything in green are the single-family residential lots. It does have the areas in purple are townhomes. And of course, here's a view of the commercial UGC area. It has townhomes and commercial proposed to be in the PUD. Just to the right, where it says R4 community lot, those are townhomes. And just off this screen, but further to the right, we're doing like a greenhouse, community-type garden facility on this property. It does have a lot of greenways. They're actually connecting to the greenway to the south along the Riverwalk. They're putting in pedestrian connection to the tennis courts. And so staff felt the request was appropriate. The plan supports this, but we did have 2 conditions. Provide access easements to Rivermont Park and the Riverwalk. They're showing that anyway, but we felt these need to be conditions. And subject to a street network plan as approved by the Chattanooga Department of Transportation. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Again, the neighborhoods actually came out in support of this development. Planning Commission felt the use was appropriate and recommended approve subject to these 2 conditions. You know, those 2 conditions again are provide access easements to Rivermont Park and the Riverwalk, and subject to street network plans approved by Chattanooga Department of Transportation.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions or comments? Councilman Mitchell, you good? Very good. That will, appreciate you, Brian. We did very well today,
Good.
and John will be proud of us, so.
I didn't wear the tie though.
I think Brian
I'll wear the
deserves
bow tie next
Brian
time.
did there's a little round of applause. Thank you. You did a great job. All right.
It's a lot of
I-
cases.
Yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Chairman, we do have one other thing. I'm not sure you may be getting ready to mention about the C4.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I
yeah,
was.
we do have a
You're good.
request. We'll be coming for the city council probably in August. We've been asked to look at the C4 zone and parking requirements. Right now, the parking requirements in C4, I believe, are 5 spaces per acre, 1,000 square feet, I think it is. We'll do a peer review and see if that can be reduced to 4 per 1,000 square feet. We may have something for you in front of August. I think John just wanted y'all be aware that amendment will be coming forward potentially in August. Has to go to the front of the Planning Commission first for their blessings, but we'll be coming in front of the City Council at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Yes, I was about to mention that. That's something that we have been talking about and revisiting and diving back into some of these zoning and making some changes and recommending changes. So I appreciate you bringing that up. There's no other items for this council on planning and zoning. I believe the city attorney has one announcement that he would like to make before we adjourn until 6 o'clock?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think last month you all requested our office to work with planning to submit an application to place certain conditions on our property. Just to let you know, the owner of that property is still having conversations with the community, and they also will not be in town for the actual planning commission meeting, so we're going to request, if there's no objection from the council, that item be deferred until July. Right. Thank you.
Any questions on that item? All right, we are adjourned till 6. Thank you.